Hi, I'm Kevin,
And I'm Amanda.
and we are serving up
All that jam. A lighthearted look at the weekend jam bands.
where we break down the jam scene's biggest stories,
Talk new bands.
upcoming tours,
And show reviews. A little laughing, some hot takes, and an always positive message for the community.
Week of July 17th, 2023, George Porter Jr.
Welcome back to All That Jam. Thanks for listening in as we watch Dead & Company ride off into the distance and Phish start off tour like they are ready to go the distance. Amanda, how are you?
Kevin, I am good. I am, I'm feeling like we're going to be going into the second half of this summer with a lot of great things. I know some things are ending, but Phish tours really got me hyped. I'm stoked.
Right, you had a chance the last few nights to hop on Walk Plus and lend a hand for the Phish Alpharetta shows. You have some thoughts about what you heard at the shows? What's going on?
I mean, I feel like it's some really solid stuff, and I'm not the type to necessarily bump things up if I'm not really feeling it, but at least for Alpharetta, I feel like they've really been bringing not only some good energy, but some pretty good cohesion. I'm feeling it, and I'm happy for them. It's sounding good.
Nice. I got to watch the first sets and a little bit of the second sets because I've been doing the Dead & Company after shows over there, and we've been getting a lot of they are a cover band comments on YouTube in the things about that. Do you consider them a cover band, a tribute band, or something else?
Wow. Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I would not say cover band just because the connotation of that to me is not appropriate and actually feels to me a little disrespectful. Tribute is one thing, but when you have a tribute band with members of the original band, I think it takes it into a different category that I don't know if I have a name for.
Right. What I responded was that this is an extension of the Grateful Dead because it's new members and OG members, and the catalog is the Grateful Dead songbook. So it's an extension of it. And if you want to call them a cover band or a tribute band or whatever else, I'm going to laugh if you're trying to make fun of them because they've just been something else this tour. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost like they're trying to convince themselves out of not touring anymore.
Right. Well, it's psychological when you know that the end of anything is coming. That just automatically bumps up the importance factor, the emotional factor. And I know, Kevin, later on in our episode this week, I will talk a little bit about how we want to try to honor that in the way that we can. But I'm with you, and you know what? I'm sure there's a ton of feelings for every single person connected to Dead and Co. right now.
Yep, exactly. All right. Well, we have coming up this week George Porter Jr. and he's talking about new Running Pardners in the studio, the New Orleans sound, classic R&B. We got a How I Spent My COVID from him. Alan Toussaint, The Meters. I mean, he's George Porter, and a little bit about touring. So that's going to be in 3 sections. But before we get into that, why don't we do the
top 3 stories of the week.
All right, Kevin, got 3 stories for this week. The first one is a little bit more personal to me, maybe. Mental health is a topic that is always something that I'm happy to talk about. It's so important. And just late last week, my Morning Jacket's Jim James addressed that. He addressed his mental health with a pretty lengthy message that also reflected on, his band's history. And I'll kind of cut to the tagline where he said, that he feels for maybe the first time like he's on a good path. And so I don't want to get into the entire message. It was pretty long, but he went all the way back to 1998, thanking original members, and then, talking about lineup changes, and then along the way, his own struggles with depression, how he's coped with that. And then over the last few years, different therapies and work that he has done, and ultimately revealing that James and his crew are thriving right now and just super excited to be performing together. And I just felt like it's good to share that kind of thing because we all are, dealing with our own mental health in different ways in different situations.
Yep. We had Show Up, a couple episodes. You can dig them up if you want to go back. They were actually on a Monday interview once, and we also had a short with them. They do couch tour healthcare is what I'm calling it. They have a Discord, so you can look for that. And it's so important. One of the things that we touched on with them is how it's still a taboo subject,
Yeah.
to even bring this up.
Yep. And it takes people in all different kind of aspects of our scene, as well as others, to discuss this, whether it's head on, like in this case, or even a couple months ago, we had talked about Billy Strings putting out a pretty heartfelt Instagram story,
Yep.
about maybe not saying the words mental health, but talking about his anxieties and how he has to protect himself, right, from fans or
Right.
would be fans. And so all of those different moments will get people maybe when they don't expect it, but help them to realize, we're not the only ones that are maybe dealing with certain
Right.
things.
Right. I always go back to there's two songs that mention suicide that I always think of that, maybe we need more songs about it. But China Doll, obviously, is about a friend of Hunter's who killed himself. And there's a Ghetto Boys song called Mind Playing Tricks on Me that is about mental health. And there's actually a verse in there that Scarface does about when I late at night when I drive, I have fatal thoughts of suicide. And he talks about wanting to drive his car off the road and kill himself, which was never done in hip hop before that. I mean, it's way too masculine,
Mm-hmm.
to talk about that. So I'm glad. I hope that this spurs, more people to talk about what they need. Isn't there a group that does mental health for artists, for
Yes.
musicians?
Yeah. So Backline is a fantastic nonprofit. And yes, they provide a lot of different resources, including workshops and other kind of forms of kind of live help. And I love it because it's not just for the artist, it's for crew, anyone who's in the industry. And as we know, um, being a part of any kind of venue, touring crew, that is physical. It's just as tough, as anyone that's out there on stage.
Right. I know that when I worked at bars and clubs, that it was the drugs. It was the 3 in the morning cocaine and things like that that became the issue for me because you had to stay up, but then you had to function the next day.
Absolutely. It's something that I think, uh, even in the absolute, best of intentions, it's not an easy lifestyle.
Not at
Period.
all.
End of
Not at all.
story. You can't see your friends, family, even if you're working, down the road from where you live, you're not around. And so how do you deal with that, right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, well,
Yeah.
we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad I had a chance to share that one. So the next story, this is a little bit of a follow up, Kev, to something we had talked about a couple months ago. And I figured it was only fair to put one Grateful Dead related story in our top three this week. This is going back to May, actually May 8th of this year specifically, when Dead & Co. had played at Cornell University's Barton Hall, right, the legendary venue there for a very, very intimate benefit concert. I think it was just a couple thousand fans. And basically, the show was meant to mirror, of course, the date and venue of that super iconic, 77 performance. And the purpose there was a fundraiser for Music Cares. So the organization, which is under the Recording Academy, provides health and welfare services to the music industry. So actually, maybe a connection in a way to some of what we're just talking about, as well as the Cornell 2030 project, which focuses on climate change solutions. So each of those two nonprofits will receive about $1.5 million to support those respective missions. And you know what? I think it's just a statement of gratitude all around that Dead & Co. could do this, especially kind of coming into this last part of the tour like they did a couple months ago.
And a lot of people were grumbling and a mumbling before when they announced the show. It's a cash grab, all that money. Well, all those people who went and wanted to be there, it was worth it to them to spend the $5,000 or whatever. And look at these two great things that are benefiting from that.
Right. Exactly. And you know what? Grumbling and a mumbling. I mean, that's always going to be a part of it. sometimes it can't be a show that everyone can attend. And maybe I've just gotten to a point where I've not only accepted it, I understand that. It happens. And for those that were there, for whatever reason they were there, it doesn't matter. They were there to help. And,
Right.
and yeah, they saw a great show, but you know what? There's so many other great shows too.
And with streaming, we all got to watch it. You paid your $20 or whatever, you got to be part of it, you know?
That's right. So thought I'd just follow up there with the totals. I think that that's a really special thing. And then this last story this week, Allman Brothers story. When I see things like this, I feel like it is just such a nice way to kind of dig into archives. So it was shared just very recently that the Allman Brothers Band Brothers and Sisters audiobook, which is forthcoming, it's an adaptation of Alan Paul's biography of the same name, is going to include an absolutely remarkable collection of over 40 previously unreleased audio clips and interviews. So made possible by archivists, photographers, especially Kirk West. And I cannot wait for this. I think it's going to be quite the experience.
And these are all with band members.
That's right. Yeah,
Very
exactly. And it's part of, I guess, a bigger celebration of the album's 50th anniversary, 50 years. The audiobook is going to go way beyond exploring the album's creation to really focus on kind of a cultural overview of that era. And so I just think it's going to be fantastic.
Now, the Brothers and Sisters album was the one that came out after Dwayne had passed. Dwayne and Barry had passed, right?
Yeah, and it also explores, it was that era of Greg Allman's marriage to Cher, right? Kind of even celebrity media culture. Like there were some things kind of germinating at that point in time, if you think back, that are now so commonplace in our culture around, musicians and kind of that celebrity ethos.
Right.
So I think we're going to see and hear a lot more of that type of thing as well. There are also going to be some great insights into another connection, Allman Brothers' relationship with the Dead. And I hear there's a really in-depth account of Summer Jam at Watkins Glen.
Nice.
Yeah. So I wanted to mention that this is very timely because the audiobook will be released alongside a hardcover edition July 25th. So just in about a week or so, we can all hear it.
Nice. That is fantastic. I love it. Love it.
Me too.
I so wish that Dickie and Greg had mended their bridges before Greg was gone,
Yeah, and I'm sure that's got to be something that just exists. I'm sure everybody, people have to make peace with things one way or another. Dwayne Betts is still out there. He's been making, music news recently. He's got some great stuff coming out. So the legacy lives on in so many ways. But yeah, I think that was a tough one, I think, for sure.
I will definitely be checking out that when it comes out. That's going to be a fantastic thing there. So why don't we jump into this interview with George Porter? This first clip we got into studio work, and he mentioned that the Runnin Pardners, his longtime project, had cut some new songs, that he cut a whole album of classic R&B songs in the classic New Orleans tradition. So let's check that out, and we'll see you on the other side. Have you done any studio work lately, or have you gotten away from that?
No, I have not gotten. Well, I've gotten somewhat of. My phone don't ring as much for some of the bigger name artists out there like I used to do when we were working with Alan Toussaint. But I do, I do get a few phone calls. So, people want me to put bass lines on tracks and stuff. That does happen. And because I have a working studio at home, I can easily get it done. Although my mixing desk blew up on me. About a month ago now, I'm sitting there looking at the new one on the floor on my downstairs. And it only has to go up 2 flights of stairs to get to the studio. And at 75, I don't carry something that the most I want to carry up is my backpack.
I hear
But,
you. Well, what about what?
Running Partners. We just went in the studio and just redid, not redid, but actually recorded. I think about 27 songs, or 27, or 30 songs. We did 30 songs, uh, um, and some of them is earmarked towards a new Running Partners record. And then some of it is earmarked to the documentary that's being done right now, for about George Porter Jr., which is pretty cool. Um, and then my sound engineer and girlfriend. No, he's not my girlfriend. Denise, the one that's been supervising stuff
Yeah.
I'm missing. They wanted to see me do some of my favorite R&B songs from my younger days. So we recorded like 13 songs, R&B covered R&B songs that I liked from the old days.
So you got a couple albums in the
I
can,
got I
huh?
got like 2 albums and some documentary work done. Yeah.
Well, so do you want to talk a little bit about your progression as a songwriter? Because something like Happy Song that you did with Runnin Partners, I guess 20 years ago or whatever,
Well,
is
originally
it, it's a lot different than like Sissy Strut or something like that. Can you talk about your progression to where you are now or where you feel you are?
Well, I'm not sure how to explain that because I believe today I'm kind of I'm a big fan. I have musicians in my group now that have has jazz abilities. But I'm not saying I want to be a jazz band. But I want to I want to be able to allow those players you know to be able to use their input musically to so I want to incorporate all that. Maybe I'm maybe biting off too big of a bullet, but I mean, the last record, the one Crying for Hope that's out, I thought it was my best effort to date. We did that record in 4 different studios. Everyone's in their own solo home studios, and we recorded it in the Pro Tools cloud. And so the sessions that we just finished doing, it was like really really enjoyable having everybody in the room playing together. It felt really good. Um, and we kind of lean on a touch of all of the stuff that things that was bouncing around in the back of my head, you know, not necessarily the fusion, but some but mildly jazz kind of feeling stuff. But it's still funky, and that's pretty much what I'm kind of
Your
keyhole.
trademark.
I'm supposed to be a funk bass player.
It's supposed to be. I love that.
I haven't been able to live that down yet.
Well, I guess thinking along those lines, so I do have something. This is maybe kind of a deeper question, but I always think to myself, when you're so closely associated with one place, right, and kind of iconic location like New Orleans, I mean, is that something like, do you embrace that, your role that kind of has been given to you, right, as kind of like unofficial official master of ceremonies for the city so many times? Like, do you enjoy that? Like, how does that feel to you? Or are you just like, whatever, I'm not paying attention to any of that stuff?
Well, actually, that's Kermit Ruffin you're talking about.
Yeah, Kermit. Yeah, he's
Yeah, Kermit,
Certainly.
Kermit is our ambassador, the ambassadors of New Orleans music, or to the New Orleans, to the world. Kermit got that role. I'm kind of happy to not have it. I'm not really interested in being, that to go person to, to speak for New Orleans music. I mean, there's a great deal of New Orleans music that is very disappointing to me at this point, so right now, because of the infusion of so many. After Katrina, a lot of the original New Orleans players were so replaced and so far away And a lot of those guys like from the Ninth Ward, where some of that old original R&B stuff came from, they never came back. So that part of the music is gone forever. The Professor Longhairs and the James Bookers, and those guys, now Alan Toussaint, Earl King, Dr. John, all of those musical voices are gone. So the play, and then there's another thing is that a lot of the younger musicians that's coming up today, stop, Vicky. A lot of the younger musicians today aren't gearing into that, listening to that, that older thing, because the lean towards the where hip hop and rock and roll kind of fuse together. A lot of the players are going in that direction, So, what happened 50 years ago in New Orleans. There ain't too many bands today that even leans on that. I mean, including myself. I don't. I try not to lean on that. I have a working concept of that, but I tend not to want to lean on it. Now, like the record, the R&B record, I leaned on it a lot, because it was music I grew up on, and it was music I like. And on my Monday night gigs, usually they enter the second set. The last 35, 40 minutes of the second set, I'm playing some of that old music, and that's the reason why Denise and Lil Joe was, saying, man, we should cut this stuff, we should do. Now we have live versions because every Monday night is recorded live multi-track. So we have tons of hard drives with every one of those gigs that we've done. So.
All right, Kevin, we have a lot more to share from George Porter. First, though, just wanted to remind everybody that we are on social media at All That Jam Pod, and that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, with slightly different content for each. So, I mean, you might as well follow all of them to see what comes of all of that. I think you'd find it interesting and fun. Also, make sure that you are finding us everywhere that you get your podcasts. Leave some comments. I think I recently saw some new comments on Apple Podcasts that were great, and we appreciate that. I know, Kevin, you do a great job of posting links to all the content that we share as well. And so, yeah, make sure that you are checking us out and letting people know. So I want to get back into the interview. First, though, Kevin, I have to say, let me start that over. I want to get back into the interview, but first, Kev, was this not the most fun we've had? I mean, really, this was just such a lighthearted, but also, I think, really engaging conversation with Mr. Porter. And I was so grateful for that. He was super honest with us about everything, just sharing. And so some of the other things he talked about were his views on live recordings, whether or not to release them, and then what has become kind of a standard for us, which I really always am fascinated by, how Mr. George Porter Jr. spent his COVID era. So why don't we get back into that?
You should put them on. Are you on Bandcamp? You should put that stuff up on Bandcamp. People would pay to download it.
Yeah. We don't see what the reason why it hasn't been going to Bandcamp is because so much writing is on that gig. Those gigs are really open to just off the top of our heads. And so I don't want to give it all away before I realize what we did.
Right.
And not getting I used to. Before my wife passed away, I used to when I come home, and I'll be wired up, so I don't want to go to bed yet. So I'll sit in the driveway and listen to the last set. Listen to the whole last set until I'm ducking and I'm ready to say, okay, it's time to go inside and go to bed. But I don't do that no more because I'm home alone now. I'm just me and the dog, and she don't care what time I come home.
Like, do you see a disconnect between how you're feeling, what you're thinking during a performance, and listening to it afterwards?
Oh, there's some things when you listen that is disconnected. Yeah. Ooh, you don't ever do that again. Yeah, yeah. There's moments of that when because like I said, I'm still experimenting, and even with songs that I've been playing, even in new music, I'm singing it different from the way I did it on the record. And just past Monday, I did something, and everybody, well, Michael and Terrence are in front of me. Chris is on the side of me, so I don't see him looking at me. But Mike and Terrence looked at me. It's like I said, "Whoa, did I do something wrong?" And they kind of grinned. So I said, "Oh, there was something they liked." So I'm gonna have to revisit that moment.
And figure out what it was. That's fantastic. What you got, Amanda?
Yeah, I was curious about that re-listen, especially so close to the end of the actual event, where you're still kind of in that adrenaline mindset and all. But that is definitely always something I'm curious about. I guess, just when I'm kind of thinking about all of this, one of the things that I know Kevin and I tend to talk a lot about is that time period. Because you mentioned COVID and that era, and I think that for a lot of us, we're just now beginning to really kind of process or understand a lot of what happened during that time. But I guess I'd just be curious to know, like from your perspective, was that fruitful for you in any way? Like, how did anything happen with your music and your art during that time that would not have been possible otherwise?
Well, I'm not sure if it wouldn't have not been possible. I think the music. Okay, it's a really true story. This spot right here where I'm sitting right now is in my living room. Uh, um, and I used to have my acoustic bass laying on the lap on a laying on the floor with the neck on the couch next to me. At 7 o'clock in the morning, Vicky wants to go out. Well, she wants to eat and go out. And so, I would feed her, and then she would go out the door, and I would sit on the sofa and wait for her. Wait for her to come back in. And sometimes she stay out there for 5 or 10 minutes. And so what I started doing was picking up this acoustic bass and just playing. Just waiting, just playing. And so there's probably like four, maybe 5 or 6 songs on that Crying for Hope album that was wrote here on the sofa, waiting for Vicky to come back in. And so for me, I thought COVID was, being isolated was good, was a good thing. We got something done. Um, and I'm not sure if it would have gotten done um, in exact, in the same formula because, just being sitting here alone and just doodling with my instrument, you know, um, that process of writing doesn't happen when you're with a group of players. So,
And when you have to tour and when you have to gig all the time, it doesn't afford you the space to do that. Maybe.
that's true too. I mean, we have songs that we got songs that's on this new project that were sound check pieces of music. Some grooves that happen at sound check one piece that Chris turned his iPhone on and he recorded it. I was doing and he just turned his iPhone on, and he just started playing with me. And then Terrence popped in on drums. So that was something that we revisited. And they had some funny names. They had about 4 or 5 songs that they done that him and Mike and them had been naming. And they would name and say, "Oh, the next record," and they're naming that little piece of music.
Like you said before that clip, he's just such a fantastic guy to talk to, and so giving. I mean, for being who he is, he doesn't think of himself as being, as important and influential as he is. But let's check out what we got going on the rest of the week. Tomorrow on Tuesday we have Zach Nager from the Gray Boy All Stars. One talking about the Gray Boy All Stars. Wednesday, we got Stephen Bernstein on his Community Music Volume 1 through 4 LPs. Thursday, Todd Klauser on working with all the guys from Martin, Medeski, and Wood. Friday, we got Brian Thomas on Brian Thomas and Alex Lee Clark Big Band. Saturday is Jim Cotta talking about Bonfire and the videos and remixes done. And then Sunday, we got Christopher Machete on Rack and the comparison to Phish and how it was bad then, but now it would probably be a good thing. So let's jump back into this interview. This is George talking about Alan Toussaint and the Meters and a little bit about touring, and we'll see you on the other side. So that's kind of what I've heard. Part of the legend of the Meters was something similar, right? Some of those songs appeared in between cuts of other artists.
Absolutely, that was well. We didn't do any when we were on Alan Toussaint's session recording with other people. It was not a part of it. Was that was just not something you did. Alan would have not approved of us using that time to do some other stuff, or just playing around, So no, we didn't do that. But most of the time when the Meters was recording back then, one guy would come in with an idea, and we would develop it, as a full pieces, It wasn't until probably after the Cabbage Alley, the Rejuvenation record is when the primary songwriters, Leo Nocentelli and Zigaboo, Joseph Madeles, would come in with completed pieces of music, say this is, and suggest to the other players this is what I like to hear, in this music. And that pretty much was the case that pretty much, took the Meters from being a 4-man collaboration to a solo songwriter, presenting music to the group.
Right. Very good. Very good. And you also had added Cyril Neville at that point too, I guess.
Cyril came into the well, Cyril was Cyril on Rejuvenation? I don't remember. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's the one.
Yeah, Cyril on Rejuvenation. Yeah.
Very nice. So you got anything else there, Amanda?
Yeah, I know. I was looking at your tour schedule. So I know next week, I think you're headed out to the West Coast for a little bit, and then you'll make your way kind of back. Do you like being on tour? Has that changed at all over time? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm still enjoying myself. It's the way you travel is the important part. We have well, it's not new anymore, but it's it's a 2019 Ford Transit that was that I had designed, like the Sprinters,
Mhm.
except that because we don't carry B3s or nothing like that. I put the back section, the back section of the thing, is where all our gear go, and it has 6 captain chairs in the front, and it's lot more comfortable than where we used to travel in our 15 passenger van. Again, I don't pull a trailer. I haven't pulled a trailer, since the Meters would stop pulling trailers. And so, we travel comfortable. I actually rather be in that van than going to the airport at 6:00 in the morning, like I got to do tomorrow morning.
Or do you travel with a sound guy?
Say that again?
Do you travel with a sound guy?
We travel with a production person. Joe is he did the engineering and production work on the new record. He's also the house engineer for the Maple Leaf, which we pretty much stole him from the club. And so he's been. You said again?
We won it in a custody battle.
She said we won the custody battle. And so yeah, and he's I first hired him as a bass tech, and realized that he's way more than a bass tech. And so he's been a honor to be able to have a young sober a young sober player that's out there, that's knows how to get what I need and get it done correctly.
All right, Kevin, thoroughly enjoyable. I loved listening to that again. That was fantastic. So wanted to share something with everybody, and we will be posting this out. I thought about it for quite a while, knowing that this wind down, I guess you'd call it, to the end of Dead and Company, or at least as we know it, is really a big moment. And I think that it deserves some attention and also the ability to let people share what they think about this moment in time, because I know there are a lot of feelings out there about it. So as it all kind of in everybody's minds and hearts kind of gets to that place of resolution, we want to hear your thoughts about the end of this particular era of Dead and Co. and the Grateful Dead world and sphere itself. What will you miss? What are you hopeful for related to maybe the future of this community? Like, what would you like to see? And then maybe even most importantly, favorite moments from this tour and others. So we are going to be sharing all over social media to hopefully get your reactions and responses. And we'll be able to pop those up on upcoming episodes and posts for all that jam. So make sure to look out for that. And Kev, I'll just say too, because we've done this before, whether someone wants to write a comment, we'll also give some people opportunities if they want to maybe share some audio thoughts as well.
Yep, that would be cool to hear some of the voices out there that are listening.
Yeah.
And so next week, we have, maybe I should look because that's going to be my way out. Oh yeah, I want to. Okay, well, while we're recording, I'm going to ask you this. Am I still doing? Next week is Ryan J, but the week after is Galaxy Jams. Should we still run that if they don't exist?
Well, they do exist, and they have a ton of content that they're still putting out. They had not
Okay,
really
so
like kind of like us. They have so much. They're just
backlog.
not recording new right now. Yeah,
Right.
so totally cool.
Right. And with that, also next week, make sure that you we're gonna have Brian J on talking. We've had a couple clips with him, but he'll be on from Pimps of Joy Time. And with that, I'm just gonna say, stay beautiful, but don't stay underground too long. I'll see you, Amanda.
Thanks, Kev. Working on it.
Right.